the best they've got, just like livestock, you breed the best with the best, they would shell some off, save it, and that's what they plant the next year. If they had a bad production year and a lot of ear molds, well, their quality was bad, so that means the next spring they were going to have problems. And Eckert saw an advantage, and a marketable advantage, in being able to do this. So that was the first time that we really had a organization formed. Now, by 1915, Hayes was getting quite a reputation working with East. So what happened? He was offered a job. He went to the Minnesota Agricultural Experiment Station. Now, when I was in school and in genetics, there was a general breeding text. Now, Jones came in and he was amazed with the variability that he saw in the breeding nurseries. And he convinced East to try something. And it hadn't been done exactly this way before. He said, you know, it'd be interesting if we took every inbred and crossed it to every other inbred. A dial-out. This was done before anybody ever knew what a dial-out was. But if you do that, grow the material out, you can learn a lot about inheritance, a lot about characteristics. So this was done. It was grown out in 1917. Two things hit Jones very quickly. Hybrids were great, and there's no way you can use inbreds for seed. There just is not enough seed. But what happens if you cross two single crosses? That one question changed the course of developing corn hybrids in the United States. So he thought about that. What else was going on in 1917? Does anybody remember? U.S. went into World War I. Jones picked the two single crosses to cross to see really what happened. He picked the best ones he had. And June 2nd, 1917, DeKalb County Soil Improvement Association had been growing, but the way it was structured, it couldn't really function as a business. So there was a spin-off, and there was an incorporation on one side, went one way, and that incorporation resulted in the DeKalb County Agricultural Association. And then the other spin-off side ended up evolving into DeKalb County Farm Bureau. So they were sort of using a common purpose, but as more and more business was involved, they had to separate to be able to do things. So now the DeKalb County Agricultural Association can now go out and they can spend money, bring in money, invoice, carry inventory, and do a lot of other things that made it more difficult in the past. So that's what Eckert did. He went and got legume seed, limestone, was able to move it around, start handling seed corn better. And he hired Mr. Charlie Gunn to come in as a first corn breeder. He gave him one primary objective, and that was to try to improve on the performance of a variety called Western Plowman. That was a fairly popular variety at the time, and it had potential to even be better. Okay, let's go back to Jones for a second. He had the double cross results now. 1918, he grows the material out. The double cross, highest yielding thing was a double cross, 116 bushels the acre. And again, you're still talking yields, national yields of less than 30. The double cross happened to beat all the single crosses that year. It out-yielded the varieties by 20%. So being a responsible person and not having a lot of locations, he says, well, it looks good, but we better repeat it. He ran the experiment 5 years. Same results all the time, all the way through 1924. This work is getting out. It's getting out in the mainstream now. People know what's going on. And there was a picnic being held. Tom Sr., who had come with the company in the early 1920s, whatever, had asked Henry Wallace to come and give a presentation at the picnic. So Wallace came, he was Secretary of Ag at the time, came, gave a presentation, and then afterwards, he shared some information about what was going on in developing hybrid corn. Really got Gunn's and Robert's interests up, and Wallace went on. Wallace's family happened to go on and form a little company called Pioneer Hybrid International. So he believed it. Well, it turns out that Tom Sr. and Charlie believed in it too. There was a little bit of a problem. They believed in it. Remember what happened in 1904? Hopkins had canned the program. The University of Illinois says, no, we're not going to do anymore. So they really couldn't get a lot. And this is very nice. This was the competition at the time. So they were a force to be reckoned with, so why tell people anything if they had the results anyhow? Something else that I can't present visually because we didn't work able to set this up for an actual presentation. But you go to this particular time frame and you look at what Mr. Gunn did, there had been no protocols written. No one had done it before. He recorded every row on a 3x5 card, took copious notes. And if it was good, you saw why it was good. If it was bad, you saw why it was bad. There were no field maps. There wasn't GPS. Everything was hand-drawn. He had detailed notes on the husbandry of the crop. It was interesting to go through, and if I ever have an opportunity to give it in a larger place, we actually have examples of this that Dwayne Rubendahl and I were able to capture digitally. We just shared what we thought were the highlights right here. So the very first nursery was an observation nursery in 1924. The next year, 25, started the actual breeding. And with some work that Sue Breezy and Forrest Troyer did, the actual location was in sections, the southwest quarter of section 17 of whatever township this is.
DeKalb.
DeKalb. Well, I live in Sycamore. Now, something we would like to do is get enough interest to get a historic marker put there. So acknowledge the people's work and very appreciative of it. And there's a lot of things that we would like to do. So they kept things fairly quiet. And again, I don't expect everybody to see this, but I'll point this slide out. 1933, they had enough corn planted that was potential to be commercialized. This slide is not exactly correct. Versus Western plowmen. Now that got people's attentions. When you had farmers come in and could just physically see that much difference, it was very, very impressive. The first product that was marketed, which was probably that market, the very first year, it was the 3A, 1934. Very bad seed production year, really didn't have enough to make an impact. It was 1935 when things really started getting going, and that's when it became known as DK203. Now, we're very fortunate today, and I have to be very careful what I say about Mr. Gunn's career, because we have an individual here that kept Mr. Gunn straight. His former secretary, Mrs. Larson, sitting in the front row. So glad to have you, and if I say anything wrong, you stop me, okay? He had a very distinguished career. During his 35 years of active breeding, he or his staff developed